Hello, we're pre-recording, so anything that happens after the 7th of August, we won't have covered. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Enjoy the show.
What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome to For The Fans with me and my co-host Ben. And to whet your appetite for this Premier League season, we have 5 preview shows for you to listen to. This is the first. Today we're covering Arsenal, Aston Villa, Burnley and Chelsea, so let's get straight into this.
We're back. We're officially back. The World Cup's over. The summer holiday is, it's nearly over. And me and Jack are back. It's me, Ben. My co-host Jack's with me.
You're right, Ben. It's been a while. I say it's been a while. We've not talked to each other daily in a while since the World Cup. We've kind of had a respite from one another. But I'm excited with this Premier League season to get back chatting to you every week.
Yeah, I've missed you.
I've forgotten how to speak in the meantime, but we'll get there eventually.
You miss me?
Yes.
Not very sincere.
No.
As you mentioned in the little bit you do before the show, we're looking at Arsenal, Aston Villa, Burnley and Chelsea. The podcasts are available on iTunes. If you're listening on the YouTube, we're available on iTunes. There's more stuff we can talk about later on in the show. But here we go then. We'll start with the 3rd place team from last year, the 4th place team from last year even, Arsene Wenger's Arsenal.
Where do you want to go with Arsenal? All the interesting cards being played. That's my saying. I'll let you have it.
They've okay, let's quickly look back. Well, do you know what I'll do? We'll have a little look back at last season. They finished 4th. Will they be happy with 4th? They are kind of the 4th place team in the Premier League, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think given the circumstances in which they finished 4th, when you consider kind of where they were around December time, and even January time to an extent when they were right up there at the top of the table, and then of course they made their legendary Kallstrom signing, and that was kind of a sign of what was to come, really. Arsenal, my God, we're going to get absolutely hammered by the Arsenal fans this episode for dropping the Chelsea bombs. But for me, they will be disappointed with 4th because of the way they finished there. But given the squad they had and how they actually played, I don't think they can be too surprised with kind of where they ended up finishing this kind of season.
Yeah, they had a really good start to the season. They were the standout team at the start of the season. Then they kind of, I don't want to say the Arsenal thing of kind of just filtering off, but that kind of is what happened. But Wenger's been busy in the summer. Like us, he was very busy. You know, we did loads of shows, didn't we? We're good, aren't we? We're bloody good. Once again, thank you for listening. I know we should have done this at the start already, but I will say thank you if you enjoyed the World Cup shows. On to Arsenal. Thank you, Arsene Wenger, for listening to our fantastic recommendations on players, which we didn't give. I guess the big transfer was Alexis Sanchez. He chose Arsenal over Liverpool. I think that was pretty clear. Apparently, there's a couple of other clubs involved. Maybe Juventus were hinted at. But Wenger got his man. Good signing, worthwhile signing.
I think he's going to add a lot into their team in terms of just a little bit more excitement in the final third. I think it was if a lot of people have kind of compared him to Walcott and said, how they're two very similar players. But you look at last season, Arsenal missed Walcott for a lot of it with injury, and I think there is no harm with having 2 players like that. And I'm certainly not one of these people who kind of feels like neither of them is going to be able to play on the pitch at the same time. I think Walcott might even be kind of pushed a little bit more central next year. Well, this year now, as it is.
My only kind of, and this isn't bitter, but my only qualm with the signing of Sanchez is that I am one of those people that think he's basically an upgrade of Walcott. He had a terrific World Cup. I just think Arsenal needed strengthening somewhere else before they went after Sanchez. That said, he's a terrific buy for them. I think he'll have an excellent season. I really do. I think he'll be suited to the Premier League. I think he's pacey and he's quite slight, but he's quite aggressive. And I think that's really important if you come to the Premier League. And he's very quick, as we all know. Looking across the rest of the side, Debuchy, he came in.
He did indeed. I'm not surprised he went there, being a Frenchman. They always end up at Newcastle and then seem to either progress to Arsenal or just kind of stay in the tune. But I think he's a good acquisition for them, and Chambers as well. who's capable of playing at either full-back position. I think especially with the Sagna departure to Man City, as it was, I believe, out on a free, that was an area of the park which probably needed strengthening before Sagna went. So I think they've got two very good replacements there. I think Callum Chambers, was it 16 million they've paid, including some bonuses and stuff that might go their way?
It might add up to that, I think.
I think that's a pretty steep price for him. I would have liked to have seen him probably stay at Southampton for another year where he's guaranteed a lot more first-team football with the kind of departure of Luke Shaw. Yeah,
it did ring of the Walcott-Chamberlain transfers, didn't it? It was just kind of... It was a little bit under the radar, I thought, because a lot of other things were going on at the time. I think the Chambers transfer just kind of happened. And with all the outgoings at Southampton, it was just... No one really batted on it. It was weird. No one really batted on eyelid at it. Whether he turns out to be a good signing, it's very much like transfers we'll talk about coming up in the Manchester United section. Whether it will be good or not, we don't really know. It'll be one of those that will take a little bit of time. Overall, their squad, I wouldn't say it was bare, but I still think they need a little bit of help in the middle. I think Ramsey and Wilshere are okay. I think Flamini's good and Arteta's good. I still think they need that one person. They've been linked with Khedira. Would he be the answer to the problems?
I think they do need a little bit. I want to say they need a Vieira in the centre, and I hate saying like a team needs a past player, because in reality, there's not that specific player they need, but they just need a little bit of doggedness, I kind of feel, in the midfield. They just need someone who's going to hound other players and really apply some pressure from the midfield, because I think that's actually something they lacked kind of last year. Obviously, they've had Diaby, but he's just been absolutely rocked with injuries, so I don't know, that's one area where I'm a little bit... I kind of, if they get Khedira, great. If they don't, and there isn't an adequate replacement who they kind of bring in, I feel as if there might be a few teams who maybe find some gaps between their midfield and defence.
Yeah, a lot of the expectation on Arsenal is always massive. You listen to the fans on Twitter and whatever else, they expect to be winning titles. It's pretty simple. They're in the top 4 every single year, and that's credit to them and Wenger. The consistency is the issue. Another talking point for Arsenal fans is the fact that although they've signed Sanchez, they still haven't really got that second striker. Olivier Giroud showed last year that he burnt out effectively. He started off the season extremely well and then just kind of fizzled off. So is there a man you think they could bring in, or is it a case of them promoting players like Joel Campbell and Sonogo?
I'd like to see them promote some players from within. I don't like to look at kind of pre-season too much in terms of kind of judging teams, but Sonogo had a very good pre-season. I actually feel as if Arsenal last year, although a lot was made of kind of maybe Giroud not being really clinical, they scored plenty of goals. I mean, I'm looking through the players who got assists in their team. Ozil, Cazorla, Giroud and Ramsey got, they got easily 38 assists between them, I believe it was, if my maths is correct, which is not. It was 34, I believe. But my kind of point is that they've got the creative players there, and I don't know if they have to have a finisher. And I might be one of the few people who thinks that, but I think they might get away with it. I don't feel like it cost them. I don't feel like the lack of a striker perhaps cost them where they were in the league last year.
I think it might have done, but I'm sure there's other areas which they could strengthen. Overall, I think they've got a pretty good squad. I expect them to finish top 4 again, mainly because they do it every year. So I kind of expect them to do it again, and that's kind of my theory on Arsenal. You the same?
Yeah, I think they'll do well, and I think they'll probably be in the top 4 next year.
Yeah, in terms of, we'll finish with this. Key men, Ozil, Ramsey, I've got it written down. I don't think they're the only key men, but I do think those two will make it, like Arsenal really miss Ramsey, and Ozil is, despite having a bit of a weird season last year, he's still world class.
Yeah, I think Ramsey will be intriguing just to see how he picks up off the back of last year, because he really did have, I don't want to say a breakthrough season because he's always been highly tipped, but he certainly lived up to perhaps some of the expectation that's been placed upon him.
Yeah, I'll give you that. So we'll move on. Arsenal, we're probably saying top 4.
Yeah, I think they'll be in that battle. I think it's going to be very tight at the top.
Yeah, I will come on to it in a little bit, but I don't think they'll be quite close enough for a title push. But I do think 3rd, 4th is pretty safe for them. It's a safe bet. On to Aston Villa. Quite stark contrast with them. Paul Lambert in charge. Finished 15th last season. Probably an okay season for Villa, looking back.
I think 15th is a little bit deceptive of how well they actually played and how well they actually did. Obviously, it's safety. I don't know what Villa's ambitions are. When you're signing players like Joe Cole, I question whether or not you actually expect to be in the Premier League the next year. It's kind of... For me, Villa just lack some ambition. I think they made a few really ambitious signings. You look at the players they brought in a few years ago, like Benteke. Even last year they had... is it Akore in the centre position?
We were talking to Kino, who the lovely chap that does our intro, and he's a Villa fan. He's saying that they missed Akore throughout the season. He was there for the first 5 games, and then the Villa fans never saw Vla and Akore really put their mark on the defence, and arguably that hurt them. I've got for the key men for this side, Brad Guzan. I thought was excellent last year. Arguably kept him in the division, and then you got Benteke, who at the other end of the spectrum. It's amazing to me that he's not left actually so far.
He did have a little bit of an off year last year, though, didn't he? He didn't play as well. I know he had injuries and stuff, but he had that real breakout Premier League season. And I feel like this is a common thing that happens in the Premier League, is players will have a breakout season, and then teams become aware of them. They kind of know what to expect. I think he got 10 goals last year, which by his standards I wouldn't say is great. I think he's going to adapt better than Michu has, because obviously Michu's now left, and I don't want to draw too many similarities, but both of them played a similar role for their teams in the first year, and they both kind of were the lead goal scorers for Swansea and Villa respectively. And I feel as if the injuries have hurt Benteke a little bit, but I do question whether or not he's going to be quite the surprise package that kind of he was in his first year when he was fit.
Yeah, you compare him to Michu at Swansea. Well, Swansea brought in Boney, and he got 17, was it last season? He scored very well for Swansea last year, and Villa haven't got that second boost from another striker. They've got Vyman at Bonalhaw. They've got a few names, but Benteke is the key man there. And Wanamaker Lambert, obviously, we used to follow Norwich quite closely when he was there, so we know how much he was loved at Norwich. He's gone to Villa, and they started off being a little bit convinced. I think they saw what he did at Norwich, and they thought, yeah, come on, do that for us, because we're a better side. And it hasn't really panned out for him. He's not got 100% support from the stands.
Yeah, I will put some money on now. I won't put money on. I'm not a betting man, but I will quite comfortably say, kind of, I think he might be the first manager to get sacked this year. I'm very worried for Villa this year. And I know Kino was really kind of bigging up their defence when their players are fit, but Corey only played 5 games at the start. I don't feel as if he's proven himself yet as a Premier League defender, and he's still very young, the Danish international.
I'm equally worried for them. I think they've got off last year a little bit from having teams below them that were absolutely crap, just dreadful sides that went down. And Villa, while not sparkling last season, weren't as bad, and they stayed up because they weren't as bad, not because they were better. And that for me is a big worry if I was a Villa fan. Villa fans, if you disagree, feel free to get in touch with us on Twitter at ForTheFans Show. You're going to say something?
I was just going to say that for me, Villa played quite negative football in terms of they kind of cut out the midfield in their build-up play, and it's very much pump the ball to the fast men up top and use Benteke's strength to hold up the play. And last season they got a few hard-earned points, and then they got a few points against lower teams, but I feel as if that negative football isn't going to win you points in a relegation battle, and I think that could be a kind of an undoing point for them. Their inability to close out games against teams who know kind of what to expect from them and that they're expected to go for, because I don't think that's Lambert's style. Yeah,
their home form last season I don't think was very good. I think it was talked about quite a lot last season. Their home form was it was a sticking point. It was a problem for them, and that's something they're really going to have to turn around if they're going to start this season. I don't want to say they're dead certs to go down, but as you mentioned, I think they'll be in the dogfight. I think they'll be one of the maybe 4 or 5 teams that will struggle. We'll move on to another team that I think might struggle, maybe. And it's newly promoted Burnley, who had a very good year last year in the Championship. We should take nothing away from them. They had a really good year. But Sean Dyche, he's got a job on his hands.
He did a good job at them last year. I think a lot of people are amazed to see them progress how they have. I know their kind of strike force last year really carried them a long way. Ings had a really good season, Vokes as well. But I don't know. I actually think they might do a bit of a Hull, where I think they've made some smart acquisitions this year in their signings. You look at the players that they've actually brought in. You've got players like Knightley, who they've got from Stoke, Matt Gilks, who they've got on a free after, I believe he was released from Blackpool. Marvin Sordell they've picked up. Matt Taylor from West Ham is a great signing, I think, and Stephen Reed from West Brom as well. They've not spent a lot of money, and the signings they've made, they've not announced how much they paid for, but I kind of feel as if Burnley are almost preparing to go back down, and they're really just using this as a stepping stone year. But I think they've actually signed some vital Premier League experience, which could serve them quite well.
Yeah, I think it's very easy for us to say that as a newly promoted side, it's going to be difficult for them staying up. But there's not that much difference in the top 7 or 8 teams in the Championship and the bottom 6 or 7 in the Premier League. Those kind of teams are very similar. There's a massive gap from, like, in the Premier League from about 11th to top. There's a huge gap, and when I say top, I mean like top 5, 6. There's a huge gap in that kind of area, which I think Burnley can easily, like, they can't easily stay up because it's going to be a challenge. They're newly promoted, but as you point out, they've got a lot of good goal scorers. They've got 19 clean sheets in their 46 Championship games last season, which is almost half their games is a clean sheet, and that is difficult to do in the Championship, I imagine. As you mentioned, they made some good signings. Momentum from last season is going to be everything. We've seen it from teams that have come out recently, Southampton, Swansea, Norwich. They did it in recent years. Hull are a great example of it. If they can keep their Championship form going, and they can get Danny Ings scoring goals, Marvin Sordell's been signed, as you mentioned, Sam Vokes. If those 3 can they're going to be rotated around, you imagine. But if they can start firing them in, they're in pretty good shape. I worry for their midfield, though. I think their midfield's a little weak. I'm
looking forward to seeing Danny Ings in the Premier League, because he's only 21, 22 now. He's still a very young player, and he had a really good season breakout year, many people would argue, last year in the Championship. And I think I'm hoping that he's going to be a Championship player who makes that step up. It feels like for every one Championship player who kind of steps up to the Premier League and proves themselves as a goal scorer, there's probably another 4 that flop. I think it's actually quite bold what the promoted teams have done this year, in terms of it seems like they are going to be relying on the players who fired them up into the Premier League to back them up this year. Burnley perhaps more so than Leicester and QPR.
There's quite a few. Well, all 3 of the promoted teams that have come out, we'll come on to the others later, but all 3 of them have got goal scorers. And as you point out, it usually happens where 1 or 2 of them will score 10 to 15 and the rest will struggle to break 10. And it'll be those teams that go down, and it'll be the teams with the players that have come up and shown they can do it at the Premier League level that'll stay up. And Burnley have got a few of them. So, you know, they've got a couple of guys there that scored 20 or more. So I don't know, talking about them now, I'm feeling relatively optimistic. Looking at them on paper, you kind of look at Burnley and you think it's going to be tricky. But talking about them, I think they've got a chance. Yeah.
Yep, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Do we want to move on to Chelsea? I feel like me and you both wanted to come on to these right at the beginning when we were talking about the team.
I said third. You said their name. You named them.
I know, my word.
They had a really poor year last year, Chelsea. Jose Mourinho's still in charge. But last year, for me, that's a failure. I think Mourinho will see it as a failure, and I think the fans will see it as a failure. And it was quite clear what the problem was. Have they fixed it by signing Diego Costa?
What do you think the problem was? Because I wanted to rant about Chelsea, but I'm kind of holding myself back because I want you to say your piece on them first.
They've spent close to 100 million on strikers in the last 4 or 5 years, and they still haven't got one. Whether or not Costa's the guy, we don't really know. They had the best defensive record last year in the Premier League, finished 3rd. They conceded 10 less goals than anybody else. They conceded 27. The next closest was City with 37. So for me, it feels obvious where the problem was. I think once they signed Matic, that was that kind of little issue over. And they've replaced Lampard with Fabregas, which to me is an upgrade. I don't know anyone else. And they've got a lot of creative players. What they didn't have was a really banging form or peak Samuel Eto'o or a Torres in the same sentence. It wasn't working, and Costa may well be the guy.
Because for me, okay, a lot of people made a lot of Liverpool throwing away the title last year. They said Liverpool slipped. Are
you better, Jack?
Yeah, a little bit. But no, for me, the team who slipped were Chelsea. You talked about their lack of conceding goals. They had a really good defensive record. They lost 6 Premier League games last year. 6, which is a very low kind of total given how competitive the Premier League is, particularly amongst the teams at the top. The worrying thing about all of this is the teams they slipped up against were Everton, Newcastle, Stoke, Villa, Crystal Palace and Sunderland.
Yeah. So what are you deducing from that?
Losing against the little teams is what cost Chelsea the league last year. Everywhere else, they turned up against the big teams. In those games, of those 6, 4 of them they failed to scoring. So I think the goal scoring thing is an issue. But they conceded 3 goals against Stoke City. I feel as if it's just the mentality that they have going into those games. Perhaps Jose Mourinho underestimates them. And I think they might be a little bit complacent with that regard. And I think that cost them last year, the league. Just an inability to close out games and really get in a good mindset. You know, they lost 1-0 against Everton, Villa and Palace. They are games that, regardless of the scoreline, you expect Chelsea to get back into. No, and they didn't.
I would wholeheartedly agree. You look at the ins, I think they potentially, so far anyway, have done the best business. They've only signed 4 first-team players. But to me, they've signed. Well, let's look at it. So they've signed Fabregas, and Lampard's gone. Well, he's gone to New York, hasn't he? But he's gone to City, which we'll come on to later. Then at left back, Ashley Cole's gone. But Felipe Luis from Atletico Madrid's come in. Fantastic signing, I think that one. Just a younger, better upgrade, much like the Lampard the Fabregas signing.
He's not super young though, is he? He's 29, I believe.
No, but I mean Cole. He's a 29-year-old, arguably in his peak. And that's the difference.
They paid 30 million for him, I believe. I know where the site we're looking at says it was undisclosed. I'm pretty sure it was rumoured to be around 30 million. I think anything over 20 million for a 29-year-old defender is a little...
It's Chelsea,
extreme.
Chelsea
I know it's Chelsea, but I kind of feel like financial justification doesn't make a transfer a good piece of business.
Okay. No,
I don't like the attitude teams have where it's like, oh, we had the money to spend.
I will imagine he's on quite... Like, I imagine his wage isn't close to what Cole's was when Cole left.
That's true, but I'm a little bit. I'm actually surprised he missed out on the World Cup as well, because I think he had a very good year. I mean, both Atletico signings they made, Diego Costa as well. I think those players can have a little bit to prove this year, but I kind of feel like they will be up to the task.
Yeah, Costa. We shouldn't like mess around this. Costa was excellent last season for Atletico Madrid. The big problem for me that Costa had was the fact Madrid got to the finals of things. And they got very... Like, when they won the title even, he wasn't really a part of it because he picked up an injury. The same thing happened in the Champions League final. Then he went to the World Cup and played in a system that he'd never played in before and was unused to. And everyone was like, well, this guy's terrible. And Chelsea have forked out the money for him. Is he going to be another Torres? No. He's not. For me, no, he's just not. I think he's set for the Premier League. And he may well suit the Premier League better than he suited the Liga.
Do you think Chelsea would have got him cheaper if they'd gone in for him after the World Cup and maybe risked other teams getting interested in him? Or do you reckon they would have still had to have played a very high sum? Because to me, I kind of feel like his value certainly depreciated after the World Cup, and I feel as if he's actually going to come to England with a little bit of a point to prove.
It depends how Mourinho sees it. If Mourinho looks at the way his season finished and when the World Cup went, the same way I did, I don't think Mourinho will be bothered, because I think Mourinho will think he's had a terrific season at Atletico. It may only have been one season, but we need a goal scorer. And from what I've seen, he can do it. Almost as interestingly as Costa coming in, obviously Drogba's come back. I think he's been spoken about so much, I don't even know what to say on it. Just fine. I thought that's kind of my view on it.
Yeah, I think he'll actually be a better backup than Torres is, and I'm surprised that Torres hasn't gone, despite the fact they have sold, of course, Lukaku, and obviously Eto's also gone out on a free now, and Bar's gone to Besiktas.
Well, so they can't. Lukaku. Can we just talk about Lukaku?
Hit me with your best shot. Go with it.
I am amazed. Well, firstly, as soon as they signed Costa, that was Lukaku gone. We'll talk about Everton soon. I cannot believe Mourinho is prepared to let a player of Lukaku's power and ability go. I know it's 28 million, and I know they only paid about 20 for him, but he was ready-made, in my book, for that team, to play with his teammate at Belgium, Eden Hazard. He was made for that team, and I find it... Like, Chelsea obviously regret selling Daniel Sturridge to Liverpool because of the season they had last season. Lukaku will arguably do exactly the same thing, and I based that off the fact he had a good season for West Brom. He's had a good season for Everton. I'm just amazed they sold him. I can't believe they sold him. Yeah,
I think it's... I expected them to sell him. Surprised they sold him to a divisional rival. I know it's Everton. No disrespect to Everton fans, but I don't think Chelsea look and go, they're going to be fighting us for the title this year.
Yeah.
But I think 5 years down the line, Lukaku could be firing a team to a title, be it in England or elsewhere. And I think if it comes back to bite them, that's going to be looked at perhaps one of the worst deals in Premier League history, because I actually think Lukaku has so much to give wherever he's going to end up. I feel as if there is not many people who have proven themselves in the Premier League at the age they are. I mean, you look at players like Ings, and we talk about, is he going to be able to prove himself? You look at Lukaku, it's like, well, he's proved himself for 2 or 3 years now in this level, and he's the same age.
I can't help thinking we'll listen to this back in a year, and we've set ourselves up for a massive fall. But yeah, I'm not taking. I don't want us to sound like we're making Everton feel stupid. We'll come on to how good a signing he is when we talk about Everton, but I think for Chelsea, that's a loss. They obviously don't see it that way. They obviously think that they've got men to do the job, but I'm just very, very surprised that Mourinho quite clearly doesn't rate Lukaku, because if he did, he'd still be at Chelsea. No Lampard or Cole for Chelsea.
Yeah, so it kind of feels like the end of an era. Yeah, I was about to say, it just feels as if it's like a closing chapter almost. I think when Terry goes, it really will be the end of kind of, I want to say old Chelsea, but obviously, I don't know, it's kind of weird, because I thought forever associated, especially Lampard and Terry, with Chelsea. And it's kind of, who is that kind of player who you go, that is Chelsea Football Club epitomised in a player when they go? And I don't feel as if, I think that's been one of Chelsea's actual weaknesses in the last few years, is their ability to bring up their own young players and really bed them into the first team.
I've just noticed on our list, it doesn't say, like, we obviously know it has happened, but it doesn't have written down that David Luiz has gone to PSG for £50 million.
I'm surprised that PSG paid that much.
Yeah.
I mean, we said, would Diego Costa's value have gone down after the World Cup? David Luiz's certainly wouldn't.
He wouldn't have gone for £50 million,
no.
Would he, for that way?
I don't think he's going to be a miss for them. I feel as if at times he was a liability.
I'm going to miss him. Are you going to miss him?
Is this on a personal level?
On a personal level, I'm going to miss him.
I can see why.
He's funny. He makes games entertaining. I'm watching a game thinking anything could happen here. He could do whatever he wants.
Do you want to do a La Liga podcast? Liga 1 podcast. We can do both. Why not?
I don't want to do a Liga 1 because it's 3 teams really, isn't it? So anyway, I think that brings us to the end of our first 4 our first 4 teams all over the place. Can you tell we're back? How's that gone? Was that good?
That was great. Guys, if you haven't already, of course, you can find us on iTunes. If you found us on iTunes recently, welcome. We did a World Cup show. If you enjoy the podcast, you can hit the rate button. It helps us get up the iTunes charts and helps more people find the podcast. We have a fantasy football league. All the details can be found over on the Twitter, which is ForTheFans Show. We also have a YouTube channel, that's ForTheFans Show. And we have a Facebook page, which I think is also ForTheFans Show.
Yeah, on the fantasy league thing, we're going to put it as our pinned tweet. I've just decided that, Jack. So if you can't find it, it'll be the top of our tweets. Will be the fantasy football. We've already got over 250-ish people doing it. So get involved. We'll, if it goes well, we'll try and give out some prizes at the end of each month if we can get some prizes to give away. So yeah, good idea. Great idea. So that brings us to the end of our first preview show. I hope you've enjoyed it. The next teams we're looking at, Jack, are who? Crystal Palace, Everton, Hull City and Leicester City.
That is going to be an absolute amazing show. I'm looking forward to that one.
2 teams in Europe, to be fair, Jack. You're mocking it.
It's true. I'm being a bit sarcastic here. I should take that back. Right. Thank you for watching as always, guys. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button. From me, Jack, and my co-host, Ben. We'll talk to you guys in a bit.
Bye!